That's clearance. Have a great show.
Welcome along, watchers of the Tube of You and listeners of the If I Have Spots. This is Absolute Scenes, the show that introduces Benedict to Beatrice, Sally to Harry, and Mr. Smith to, well, Mr. Smith. I am Andy Barton, and joining me, as always, is someone who needs no introduction. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm kidding! It's Gabrielle Chapman!
Hello. Hi, everyone.
And genuinely, how are you, Yuri?
I'm good. I'm actually really good today. We've just interviewed our guest, and I'm going to be completely honest. I was a bit starstruck because I was really like, don't play it cool, because I've been following. So our guest this week is George Mann. You probably know that already. So I've been following his work since I was like, I don't know, maybe 16, and one of his pieces of work, I won't say what it is actually my absolute scene. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's pretty huge.
That's pretty huge. Like, and obviously I saw it many, many years ago, so I don't know how I would feel if I watched it now. And it's really interesting to see him now, obviously like several years ahead of where I started following the work and how different it is. So like, I was very much excited to just mine his brain of various different things. And also the thing I'm really interested that we spoke about a lot is actually, we talk about a lot about his most recent play that's coming to Bristol Vic in a few weeks.
Yeah, Last
Rites, which I'm genuinely so excited to see, and how him being, a lot of it centers around the deaf community and a deaf character, and how I was really interested to kind of be like, how do you hold that?
I mean, because I'm learning BSL.
Yeah.
To try and become fluent and an interpreter for sign, and we started doing it with my son.
Yeah.
Not because my son is has a access need of hearing or anything, because we started with Macton because it helps with young baby communication. And then because I had to, I say had to, I don't have to. My wife was going to the lessons, but I couldn't go because I was working.
Yeah.
So you had these homework and videos.
Yeah.
And I was so skeptical because I'm not, to begin with, because I've never been good with languages. Like my brother, my wife speaks French. My brother, he's like fluent in Arabic. But for this little chap here, I'm not good with languages or learning other new languages. And then I started to be curious about signing and about BSL. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is something I really like. And I became addicted to like learning. And then as we evolved, as my son's communication evolved, we moved from Macton to just BSL.
Yeah.
And and he's now sort of like talking and saying sentences, but he's still using sign to communicate.
Yeah. It's so different. Like, I think it ticks a part of your brain and like makes it alive in a way that other languages, not as in other spoken languages, don't necessarily.
When I first started in this industry, one thing that I had no idea that I'd have this interest. I had no idea that I had this interest, but I found this curiosity to watch performers and watch plays and narratives in the first language of people performing. So I could watch. So I did. I watched things like. Some of the go, but they're Polish, but they do a lot of like physical stuff. But when they do speak and they do in Polish, I don't need subtitles. Not because I know what's going on. I kind of do, but I don't. And when I talk about sort of the teaching anyway. But when I teach and see people do, I don't know, like Chekhov, for example.
Yeah.
But do it maybe when they translate it and maybe just do it in their first language.
Yeah.
And that could be anything.
There's a freedom and there's a sense and there's a true like emotion that you get.
Sincerity and truth,
Yeah.
like,
That you
and
don't-
hearing Chekhov in.
And obviously that is possible in a second language or the third, like, you know, it is possible, but there is something. I spoke to friends whose first language isn't English. There's like that a lot of them are like, I'm really funny in my first language, and I'm just not in English. And I find that so interesting because I'm like, I guess it must be like the tempo and the timing of stuff and the intonations, and I really love seeing people talk in their own language.
Yeah, and I was just saying that because of this episode. That's a genuine thing.
Yeah.
And when I first, I started doing this in my 30s, and I had, I didn't really have any thought to sort of languages because I could never really understand all. And also when I was in the police, you had interpreters. So, and you're dealing with other stuff anyway, and you're trying to, like, so you always have interpreters to translate. But it wasn't until I became an artist, maybe I've always been an artist, but it wasn't becoming like, before I left, I came full-time in the industry, this industry, this I realized that, like, watching things in other people's language, and it doesn't matter, I don't need a translator, because for me, that performative aspect, that truth you've already spoken about, that truth, it's like, oh wow, you act really differently when you don't have to think about, you don't have to do any translation,
or you're catering to someone else, which I guess is what I always, whenever I see an interpreter on stage for like a BSL performance, like I'll often go and seek out the BSL performances, and I know obviously that's not necessarily a member of the deaf community, but I always end up watching the interpreter because I find it so fascinating, so beautiful. And I think that's what I'm really interested to see this piece, because I missed
Wonderful.
Ad Infinitum.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, Ad Infinitum's last show, Extraordinary Award of Silence. And I'm really very interested to watch this piece because I think it's going to be a melding of language in a way that I've not necessarily experienced it before. Yeah. So just because they're coming from like a physical theatre perspective and BSL, and they've got captions in English. So written English. So yeah, I'm very intrigued, and I'm very excited to see how they've handled that and how the magic.
Did you see Wonder Boy?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so Wonder Boy,
Similar thing.
But interestingly, this is like, what was wonderful about this is that this could be, if you take one section aspects of Wonder Boy, this is what it would be.
Yeah, because was Wonder Boy more of like a typical scripted play?
Yeah, but with the BSL performer also on stage as part of it, and also captions, but that was also part of the narrative, part of the visuals, part of part of the physicality. So what's great about this is that if you lift that aspect of Wonder Boy, of theatre making, not the narrative, just theatre making, then you're going to get Last Rites, which I think is really cool. It's like, this is great new, say it's not new theatre, but it's like seeing, it can be new for other people, and hopefully new people are going to come and see this and go, oh wow, I never realised that I could.
So yeah, I'm excited. It's a great interview. I think George is a fascinating guy. If you don't know what Last Rites is, go and have a look on the Bristol Vic website and have a little look, and catch it if you can, because it's gonna be great.
Yeah, so should we jump into it?
Let's jump in.
Great. We'll flee you on the SIP side.
Bye.
This month's guest is an international theatre director and alumni of the École Internationale de Théâtre Jacques Lecoq in Paris. You may remember him from such short films as Small Gathering and directing such theatre productions as Extraordinary Wall of Silence, Light, and the multi-award-winning Translunar Paradise. He works to tell the stories of a huge variety of communities, including those of the homeless and deaf communities, among many others. On top of being a rather wonderful human, he is the founder and co-artistic director of Ad Infinitum. It's George Mann!
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
I just got to dive in there as a co-artistic director. So I do this with Nia Paldi, who's co-artistic director.
Yeah.
And just happens to be my husband.
You locked it down.
Yeah, yes. locked in, locked down.
So it's always been you and Nia, hasn't it?
Yeah.
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 And did you start at Le Coq?
Yeah,
together?
we met at the Christmas party at Le Coq, yeah.
Oh wow!
Love that. I share that with my wife. My wife is also we met at theatre drama school as well.
Oh, me and my partner as well. There we go.
Shut
It's
up,
where we
really?
found
Yes.
where you found the
And I just put that in there.
Nice. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. So, how are you today? How are you doing?
I'm a bit sweaty from my cycle in here, but I'm feeling good because you guys generously got me a coffee and crunchy nut something or other that's very delicious.
Good.
So yeah, good times.
Great. Should we dive in?
Yes. So we mentioned this earlier in the show anyway, but we wanted you here to talk about yourself, talk about your work. But also you've got Last Rites, the new play. Well, not really new play because it has already been done, but it's new for here at the Bristol Old Vic.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So Last Rites is a show about losing your father and becoming a father, in a sense. Or I guess you could say losing a parent, becoming a parent. It's got a kind of universal feel to it. I made the show, co-created it with an amazing deviser, performer, theatre maker called Ramesh Mayappan. And he's Scottish, Singaporean, he's profoundly deaf, and is just incredible man, beautiful man. We met in the Edinburgh Festival back in, I think it was 2010. I was performing Odyssey. Yeah, I was a lot younger. I didn't have braided.
Less stressed.
Maybe more stressed.
Let's establish.
So I met Ramesh like this.
Was he also like that?
Ramesh is so chilled out. He's really chilled. He's such a lovely vibe, beautiful energy. And he came to see the show and wanted to meet afterwards.
Great.
So we met and we discussed it, and he told me he was performing. So I said, well, I've got to come and see your work. So I did. I was like, oh my God, he's brilliant. Like, this guy is like magic on stage. He moves like a dream. And so afterwards, I was like, we've got to work together or something. You like what I did. I like what you did. It just makes sense. He was like, yeah, let's do it. 10 years passes by. And there we are in the pandemic, and I'm like, hey, Ram, we said we work together. How about we start now? I mean, we can't leave our house, but we can start, online. And he was really up for it. So yeah, we started to get to know each other in a different way, other than just like friends, and finally got into a room and discovered that we had a lot in common. So we discovered that both our dads died around the same time, both from the same kind of health condition, and that we were both becoming / just became fathers. And we were just like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what we need to look at. So, long-winded answer, but yeah, Last Rites deals with that. And it's kind of, I guess, partly autobiographical, but not really. We've created a fictional story based on both our experiences. Yeah. And then it kind of leaned more towards, I would say, Ram's experience. So the character in the show, Arjun, is a profoundly deaf man. So we're looking at this universal theme that many people have experienced, losing a parent or will do, and having a child at some point. But to see it through the eyes of a deaf man who couldn't communicate with his own father because his father refused to learn sign language feels like... for us, it felt really important to stage something like that because it doesn't exist out there. I've not seen it. And I think what's really exciting about coming here is that story being put on the main stage feels like a really exciting moment. And we feel quite blessed and grateful that Bristol Old Vic are going for it. We've got a week in the main house. That's incredible. Yeah. So yeah, it's just, very, very exciting. And in a nutshell, that's the show-ish.
What are the sorts of houses or house sizes it's been previously played to?
Yeah, so actually, for the first time in Ad Infinitum's 18-year-old life, Ad Infinitum's a teenager. Stroppy teenager. Slowly growing up. God is not a toddler anymore. No, but it's the first time we've toured predominantly in main houses. Nice. Last Rites, around the country, and that was really exciting. It was a really nice endorsement of the work, and I think also it was a push from us to, I guess, say to venues, look, this work, we feel like it's got its accolades. We proved that it can do it what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Come on, let's make an effort and try and put this type of work that was historically not on the main stage on the main stage, albeit with the challenges that come, especially in the post-COVID era where, it's hard to bring in audiences and everything everybody already knows. But and a lot of venues got on board with that, and it's been challenging, but it's also been so exciting, so wonderful to be able to tour the UK with this show in that way.
Yeah.
Have you, because so when it was first conceived, was it sort of studio size?
Good question. We didn't really know. So when we were first kind of pulling it together, first of all, we were supposed to both be in it, and then I became a father in the middle of the process. So I was like, so Rams, maybe I can't go off touring right now, we agreed that he would perform and I would direct, and we would both kind of make it together, and that's what happened. I've completely forgotten what your question was.
Well, I was asking about whether if it's actually, I'm going to evolve my question because it's around the evolution of the play, really.
Okay.
Now that going from maybe studio size to sort of main house, how has that looked for you insofar that, does it mean more ideas to put in? Do you need to make it bigger? Do you need to make the narrative bigger? I guess that's the question then.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, years ago we were thinking about, how do we transition our work to a main house setting? We don't want to lose touch with the studio touring kind of world. Yeah, thank you. Because there's something really intimate and beautiful about that. But we do want to have that experience. We want to push ourselves to go there. And we got lots of different feedback. Some of it was like, you need to think about the design of the piece and how big it is and whether it fits the stage. But other people were like, can you bring in the audience for the work in a house that big?
Yeah.
And that, I think, over the years has been the overriding question, the one everyone's like, so.
Especially now as well, with everything that's going on in the theatre world, it feels like it's more... It was always at the forefront of buildings' minds, but it feels really prevalent now.
There it is.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think, but one of the things I learned, though, over the years was, at first, I'd be like, how can we do that? How can we do that? And then I was like, wait a minute, this is a collaboration. Like, how can we let us and the venue do that? Because actually that's how it works. And then as time passed even more, I'm now looking at the sector, I'm looking at theatre and the problems it faces, the competition against like platforms like Netflix. So for the price of a theatre ticket, a cheap theatre ticket, you can get, or less even, you can get a whole month of Netflix, right? So what's theatre going to do, So in that context, I'm now thinking, I'm feeling quite confident about, look, come on, we've got to get new work out there. It can't always be Shakespeare and Arthur Miller. It's got to include new voices, new work. The next Shakespeare, whatever that is, the next this, that, and the other. So, and I'm not saying for a moment that that's what this is, but I think we've all got to be out there trying, and I think it's the role of venues to try and encourage audiences to start coming back and taking those risks again. But also the role of the government and the Arts Council to support that journey, because right now, obviously it's a really difficult time, and the primary difficulty is finance. So but we can still dream, and we can still be like, come on, let's do this. Which I think is kind of where we're at. Yeah.
It's such a strange relationship, isn't it? But of that between art and business, and whether they work side by side, or whether they dovetail, or whether they, and I just when I think I've got that answered as a maker of theatre and short films, and as a director and actor, but also working for a business like this as well, and just when I think I've got that answered, turns out no.
But I think the rules are constantly changing because of like the political and the climates in this country and the world. But it feels like, you might suddenly understand it, but then it felt like everything changed over COVID. And then everyone was like, let's just get through COVID. And then it feels like the rules have changed again. Like, I think before, maybe, I mean, I wasn't making work that much before COVID, but maybe you can answer this. Like, does it feel like it changed a lot before COVID, or do you feel like did it have big changes before then?
So when I was starting out in 2007, I got back to the UK I was in France studying, and then I stayed for a year and tried to the idea was to stay there, but it didn't work. So I came back to London with Nia, and it was still a Labour government, like the last
Yeah.
Labour government that was at least a little bit more Labour. But this one, it's just like, what are you? That's not Labour. What is that about?
Yeah.
Scary. And so actually the picture was pretty good. And then with like overnight, we had the financial crisis in 2008.
Yeah.
By 2010, we had a coalition government, and then it all just went downhill. So the first big change was the kind of cuts, huge cuts happening to the industry, the Arts Council, everyone, in the entire country.
Yeah.
And at first, it wasn't so noticeable, but by about 2015, it was. Everything was tighter, everything was more difficult, and everyone was, I think, trying to make the financial case for the arts, before we realised that actually they didn't really care about that. They were going to do what they were doing because they were ideologically driven. And then I think by about 2019, we were doing okay because a big part of our work is international touring. And international touring tends to pay what you would hope would be paid normally, but isn't when you tour in this country.
Yep.
So whereas touring is quite broken here, I think it's widely accepted that it is. And no one's doing anything wrong in the arts, I would say, that everyone's trying their best. But, it isn't fit for purpose at the moment and hasn't been for a long time. Whereas when you tour abroad, you get paid properly. So that was like a big kind of third of our income. And then COVID came along and it changed all of that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get back into the international kind of sector because I think for us, a lot of our work is non-verbal, or it crosses, linguistic and cultural barriers.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting for us. And we feel like connected to an international community that was important to us. But it's been so hard to get back to that. And what's amazing about Last Rites is we got offered a place on the Here and Now showcase at the Edinburgh Festival this year.
Yeah.
So we are going there, and with loads of international delegates, and we are.
Is that everything? You're going to Edinburgh a while, or have you been to Edinburgh?
No, we've been
Just
since COVID. Yeah, it's obviously
okay.
right. Yeah, so we have been there since COVID. I think this might be on. I can't remember if it's our 13th or 14th Edinburgh. Yes, we did that to ourselves.
Okay.
Love you, hate you.
Yeah.
Why are you so
We could do a whole episode on them, couldn't we? Maybe we should.
You might do the trilogy.
True.
So, you've been through all of these different sections of stuff. Like, what is it that drives you to keep making work?
Because that, I know I get a setback and I'm like, I've run out of energy, or like I just, what is it that keeps you?
That's so interesting. That's a really it's a very good question, and it's something that again has changed over time. I think in the beginning was this about that.
Yeah,
I kind of naivety, and then it's like let's make a shadow, innit? And that's very much reflected in the first piece we made, Behind the Mirror, a clowny gobbledygook.
Very Lecoq, very
Lecoq. Yeah, I found a mess of a show. It was really good fun, very silly. That was the first thing, and then as we started to make a platform for ourselves, we started to ask, okay, wait, what's this company about? Why do we exist? Who are we? What are we doing? What do we want to say with our work? Where are we going? And that took us a while to kind of get a head around, and then we realized that a few like common things about the work were working internationally with underrepresented artists. That's kind of what we do. We bring stories that we feel are not really in the mainstream or center stage, as it were, and we bring them to that place. So we try to and push that forward and provoke audiences to think about experiences, lived experiences, people, ideas, notions that they might not have encountered before, through different perspectives. And that suddenly became really important driving force for us. And we started to think about who can make work and who's got a barrier in front of them. And so how can we work with them to break down those barriers? So all of these things became a big driving force and part of why I and why Nina, why we love doing what we do. And then you build all these, not just connections, it's like friendships as well. You bond with people and you make connections, you understand what's important to them, and you feel a kind of growing sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And then about 10 years ago, when we were thinking that we needed to become a charity, I think we did that because we wanted the organisation to be more than just Nia and myself, right? You know the way, and it's very legitimate. You have some organisations, the name of the organisation is the name of the artist. And you let's say, and it's legit, it's great. But we were like, but what if we want to pass it on? What if this is about more than us? And so what we've been trying to build is a kind of organism that is like that, so that when we're like crawling, we can't do it anymore. We can pass the baton, So it's actually not about us. It's about this thing that we believe is really important, and all these people come together around it, and they think it is too, and we pass it on. So
you were
that word, bloody hell. But yeah, it's greater than the sum of its parts or something like that. So yeah, I think that's what keeps us going. And personally, though, sometimes I find it really tough, and that can be because it's difficult to raise money to just do anything, or it can be a difficult experience on a show, or a knockback. We've it hasn't just been like it's a success from beginning to end. It's a roller coaster.
Obviously, you've spoken about like your like you wanting to make work that really like goes into different groups that have got barriers. One of the things about Theatre Ad Infinitum is that you use the one word disrupt. Like, what does that mean to you in terms of the world or theatre or?
Well, a lot of other people are better able to articulate that kind of stuff.
I mean, I don't articulate like Christian Bale.
I thought you did really well. So the reason I'm saying that is that I came across that concept when we were making Extraordinary Wall of Silence, and I was working with an academic called Paddy Ladd, Paddy Ladd. He's profoundly deaf and incredible man, very lovely man, and genuinely so lovely. And he was just incredibly generous. And he wrote a book called Deafhood in Search of Deaf Culture, which, if you haven't read it, it's actually an extremely accessible academic tome. It's just fantastic. And it's all about this concept of deaf culture and this sense of deafhood, which he wanted to pass that on and give that to the deaf community who had just been, stripped and deprived and kind of abused, I suppose, over centuries, since a very kind of eugenicist conference in Milan in 1880 decided to ban sign language, and all of the devastation that followed and harm that happened to the deaf community following that. So, he links it all back, and he wants to reclaim this thing he's calling deafhood, So in reading that, he was breaking down how he wanted to examine how other movements have succeeded in their revolutions, in their ability to change things. And he talks about the need to disrupt. And by disrupting, you create a new space, and into that space, you can do something new.
Yeah.
And I really like that, and I think that's what we try to do. We try to disrupt, the conversation when we try to interject at a time when you might not expect it, or in this case, we take something that everybody knows, like a universal theme, but we tell it through the eyes of this deaf character, and you go, whoa, okay, it's disruptive. It shakes you from what you know, and you have to engage in something different that you don't know. Yeah. And I'm talking about the majority kind of hearing public, in this country, and I think exactly, the hegemony, So I think that was really helpfully articulated by Paddy, and it's something we kind of gone, that's what we care about. That's what we were trying to do, essentially, in lots of different nuanced ways. But that's what we mean when we say disrupt. And I think, disruption could be a really beautiful, transformative thing. It doesn't have to be something that is terrifying or, I think it can be necessary and a part of any kind of art. I think a lot of artists want to disrupt in order to make people see the world differently.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you connect with a lot of different communities, but just in terms of like Last Rites.
Yeah.
How, like, have you always spoken BSL? Like, how did you speak BSL when you first met?
No, I didn't have any sign language, no.
As someone who's not from the deaf community, how does it feel to be like being a part of representing those stories? It must feel like quite like very important that you kind of really understand that community and know the language. So that's come back.
Let's start there, because that's really important. I think what we're doing is giving a platform to the deaf community to come on board and co-create. And I think this co-creation collaboration method that we work with through devising is the only reason it's possible, if I'm honest, So when I step into a room, I have to do that with humility. I don't have the lived experience of someone who's deaf. I don't have that, although I'm learning sign language, I don't have nearly enough skills in that area. And I couldn't, it's not, some of the shows we made, I couldn't have done it without that co-creative input.
And
So
when you say, do you mean like interpreters and the performers, or do you?
no, I mean the performers. I mean, the interpreters always say play a different role.
Yeah.
It's the performers and the devisers who come on board. And actually, Ramesh, in Ramesh's case, it's purely like co-creator. We went into that on equal terms. Like if he doesn't want something to happen, it can't happen.
Right.
With Extraordinary Wall of Silence, it was a devising space where I was more like a referee than and so that some of the way the show happened, the direction it took, it was led by the collaborators in some places. Those shows only happen because of that consensus. There's like a common consensus. There's a consent. There's constant checking in and make sure everyone's okay. And everyone has to be on board all the time. And that's how it works. So I can't take the credit in that way. I think we just opened a space and built trust. Built trust over many years. But so working with the deaf community, that started not because we wanted to work with the deaf community, but because I came across a video of Matthew Gurney on TV doing this comedy scene, and it made me laugh so much. And I was doing an R&D at the time and looking for different actors, and I just reached out to him and was like, do you want to come and do it? You're really funny. I love this video. Do you want to come? And he's like, yeah, I'm up for that.
That's awesome.
So he came along and we got into a space, and I was like, oh, I don't know anything about working with a deaf artist.
Okay.
And so I went and we had honest chats with an interpreter, and I was like,
Did you have any BSL at that point?
I didn't have any BSL, no.
Okay.
No, and so Matty was is a very generous, lovely man, and he was very patiently kind of not only working with us, but kind of advising us on what it is we need to have in place in order to do the work with deaf artists properly. And that was quite a burden on him, which we now, looking back, we're like, wow, okay. And I think now we're trying to work to make sure that doesn't happen around the country. So we'll work with David Ellington, who's a Bristol-based wonderful man, deaf artist as well, and he'll go and do deaf awareness training with different venues ahead of us coming on tour, so that they don't have to go through that, and deaf artists and deaf public coming in don't feel that burden of having to communicate to them what they need. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was through that encounter of like, he's just so talented, I wanted to work with him. Yeah. And through that we then started to make friends and connections and this, and then
learn.
Wow. This isn't going to stop. We need to keep, need to keep doing this. And there's a natural affinity that some deaf artists are incredible movers, and movement's our thing. It's working with the body is our thing. So of course, sign language and deaf culture and deaf theatre cultures like visual vernacular lend themselves so well to. It's just such a beautiful connection. Yeah. It just happened, Yeah.
So you've made bilingual performances in English and BSL before, but this is the first kind of fully BSL, like one language BSL show you've made. Is that right?
Well, I would say that it's still bilingual because we are captioning the English, created captioning.
Of course. Yeah.
But unlike Extraordinary Wall of Silence, we're not voicing the English. And so I think that felt like a really important distinction for this piece of work, because I think it's the story of one, through the eyes of one deaf man, and so having an English-speaking voice felt quite domineering, especially from a hearing person's perspective, I think. And so immersing yourself in the world of sign language, and not going to the vocal space, but rather having to make the effort to follow captions and to see Ram signing as well and be able to appreciate the sign language, I think felt really important for this piece. So it's still bilingual, but just done differently.
Yeah. And your background is very physical theatre, and that's what you connected together for this piece on. So how obviously you trained at Lecoq, how much has your training informed sort of like your work? Does it still inform your work hugely today, or have you kind of like have you found your own thing, I guess?
I would say that the Lecoq training was fundamental to unlocking or liberating me as an artist. I think before Lecoq, you know, if I tried to call myself an artist, I'd probably blush and giggle. I can't call myself an artist. And then after, it's like, I'm an artist, and I've got to own this, and I want, this is what I am, and in order to get out there and make the work I need to make, I've got to own up to this.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from we've got quite a self-depreciating culture here. I think it's quite hard to stand up and say those things, or at least it was for me. So yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing is that it was fundamental in terms of my practice. I think it gave me that really important foundation upon which we built both the company and started to develop our own practice out of that. So we took a route whereby physical storytelling is so important to what we do. So we might, for example, if we do a workshop, we could do the 7 levels of tension exercise, which is directly out of the Lecoq handbook, right? Yeah. But we do it through the perspective of, okay, how do we use that to also tell story and to think constantly about storytelling while we're doing the exercise. And then the exercise takes us on this journey and then we leave it far behind and go somewhere else. And, and that's kind of what we've done with our shows. And as you make the show, you're also creating like a little universe with that show. So for example, light is in total darkness with LED lights. You can't even see your own hand till the light comes on. Haze, it's bonkers. You got techno and classical music. Wow, what an experience. But it taught me so much about theatre making that I was then able to incorporate into my practice. It starts popping up in little subtle nuanced ways in other shows, and I'm able to share that then in the kind of both the workshop setting, but also pass down things that I've learned to performers that I'm working with, right? So yeah, Lecoq was fundamental, but I think what's also incredibly important is your experience as you make work, right? Yeah. More you learn, the more you kind of, what do you call it, like strings to your bow.
Yeah. And you have you always done quite a lot of sort of like teaching and that sort of like workshops and stuff, or is that something more recent?
No, I always ended up doing a lot of it. More so in the first 10 years of the company, I would say, when we were in London. We used to work with a lot of drama schools and sometimes even run courses, hot courses or physical theatre courses. And I just found it really joyful. I really loved doing it because I was learning as I was teaching. Yeah. And it was like a way for me to keep in touch with the fundamentals of what I was doing and why I was doing it. And every time you teach, you have to think, wait, how am I teaching that? How do you teach this? Like, why do I do this? What is it? So it's such an important reminder. And then you see students practicing with it and you'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing what they've just done. And you learn something new. You learn to go deeper with a certain aspect of the exercise or whatever it is. And I just found all that really inspiring. I really loved it.
I think it's really interesting, the artists I meet over the years, because for those who really look at the craft and how I learn different, my learning has evolved. I think when I was first starting out, it was learning through just, I want to do all these courses or do all these workshops and I want to go and view people, but go learn by viewing and watching and seeing all these different shows. But I had a huge shift about 5 or 6 years ago where I'd become more confident as a teacher. And then I had that epiphany where I realized I was learning as much during the teaching. And it's really interesting to meet some artists, that's never a thing for them. And that's totally, and it's great. And they, but when it's really interesting to see and meet over the years, the artists where that is a big thing, where I've probably learned more from teaching at times than I have from like workshops and stuff, which I think is huge. Do you think that has always been, so turn it into a question, is that something that's always been innate in you, or is that something that's evolved for you as an artist?
Definitely evolved. I think in the early days, I struggled with maybe my confidence and also with allowing myself to cheat or fail, basically. And I learned how important failure is. So from teaching, I could see how terrified students are, especially in this country, more so than in other countries. But here, I think that idea of getting it wrong is so powerful. And so one of the first things you need to try and share with the group that you're teaching is like, start to enjoy making mistakes. Start to enjoy, oh, I'm going to say again, you can cover it up with your amazing sound effects. You need, that's how you make work. That's how you make art. You've got to get dirty, you've got to jump in, get your hands dirty, try this out, try that, and understand what does and doesn't work. And slowly but surely you narrow in to something that does work, and people go, oh wow, this is great, and you're like, yeah, we should have seen it like 2 years ago, But that's the process. But without that kind of freedom to go there, it's impossible to get there. I think it's impossible to make that anything that has a kind of sense of humanity and vulnerability to it, because you're not allowing yourself to go through a process. And so it was really interesting because I was going on a journey of allowing myself to do it while trying to get, the students I was teaching to do the same thing. Which, I now understand is one of the most important things, I think, about making any kind of art.
Yeah. And in terms of like exploring new things and learning, like, you've done like such a range of shows, like very personal, very like you've done Greek tragedy and all of that stuff. Is there anything that you've not explored yet that you'd really?
I mean, there must be so many things, right?
Yeah.
There are probably loads of things that we haven't explored.
What feels like the scariest thing you could explore then? Because you could do anything, but it might feel like as in personally, you feel like you don't have that knowledge, but you'd like to. Just think like your students.
So interesting. I don't know. I've never thought about it like that. What's the scariest thing?
Because I guess if you're telling students to fail, like what's the thing that you feel like? Because that's terrifying as a student. Like you say, they were terrified. Like what?
Yeah, I guess, but you're only terrified when you don't know it. Yeah. So once you start to understand and know that it's not actually terrifying, it's actually really good fun to liberate yourself. I was then it becomes fun, and you're oh yeah, this is why I do it.
Right.
Yeah, it's too short. So I feel like I've arrived in that place. I don't feel so terrified of things anymore, especially now that I'm a parent. I mean, that's the most terrifying thing I've ever done. So now everything else pales in comparison. I'm like, bring it on. I'm probably wrong, but I tend to get more excited now. I think I sometimes get fear about working in new relationships, like for example, with a new actor that I've never collaborated with before, and the fear that, or if it all goes wrong, what if we don't get on? And that happens as well, sometimes you don't gel with someone, and it's like, so I would say that is more of a thing than a subject matter or a type of play or something like that. It's, but even there, I've found that, it's really important to sensitively, slowly, gradually build relationships, so you can build a foundation there too.
Yeah.
And you can also say like, I need, I'm this person, these are my fallibilities. Okay, this is where I cheat, and I'll try my best not to, and so on and so forth, so I guess that's where I'm at.
That's great. I guess it's like practice, right? The more you practice, the less it feels alien, and it feels And so you mentioned being a dad.
Yes.
How do you balance being a human being with being an artist? Big question we all don't really have the answer to, but how do you do it?
Continually trying to do it and fails. I still have not figured out how to be a parent and co-artistic director.
Yeah. Well,
it's
the same person as well.
Yes.
So how do we balance that?
I don't know.
Is that the partnership?
We just keep trying, and actually I think we've learned a hell of a lot. Like Neera and I, first of all, spent 15 years together figuring out how to run this company as a partnership, how to give each other the space we need, how does that work, and we learned that it doesn't work so well when we're both in a room working on something together. So we tend now to make work separately and maybe become an outside eye for each other, because we definitely need each other's feedback and things. That's really important in loads of us. But we don't want to get too involved, because then it's back off,
My turn, please.
Totally. So then we've learned about that, and then in terms of how we work as a core team in the administrative world as well, we found that healthy separation of giving space again. Near will take care of certain tasks within the company, and I'll do other ones.
Yeah.
Things that I'm naturally good at, and he's naturally good at, and I'll be like, oh, you're much better than me. You do that, and I'll do this. You know. So that's taking time to learn, to let go of certain things, to be able to delegate as well to other team members. And then along came parenting, and yeah, it's really tough.
So really, you've kind of like found the balance by. So the last time you worked together was no kids. Hilariously. Great. So you've really found the balance now then. And well,
It feels really
that was really
found the balance would be like, yeah, oh god, that's the dream, I suppose. I think it's you're constantly working to establish balance. That's what it is. Okay, so life is a constant. It's like a move, it's like an earthquake, because it's constantly moving, and sometimes you feel a sense of equilibrium, and then everything shifts, and you're like, whoa, and you have to reset. Yeah. So I would say that is what I'm now starting to understand is the work of me juggling parenting and work is constantly being okay with having to, refine the balance again, because everything's changing all the time, including our son, who, as he grows, he changes day by day, month by month. So, it's a beautiful, joyful, exhausting challenge, but so far, the joy and the love far outweigh any other aspect of what I do.
Great.
So speaking of joy and love,
Yeah.
so it's nearly into we're going to approach now your absolute scene. For everyone, as you probably know by the format now, this is a scene from a film, from a TV show, from a play, even from a book or a song, that has either inspired you to do what you do, or continues to inspire you throughout your creative process, or get you out of the darkest, deepest quagmires when the writer's block and creative blocks come. So, for this month, George, Mann, what is your absolute scene?
Oof, it is so hard. I think whatever my kind of inspiration, my muse, whatever they call it, is always changing. So, what was 10 years ago feels unrecognizable now. Although I do sometimes revisit things. So I'm currently, it's hard to say just one thing.
That's okay.
Multiple things in my head. Weirdly, I don't know what this says about me, but the film The Hours pops into my the head. I think it's because it's hard to pick a scene. The scene, I've got this scene, I can't remember exactly. It's someone on a window ledge, threateningly on a window ledge, who is an AIDS sufferer. And I just remember that scene, but also the entire film. I couldn't stop crying. I know that's nothing to do with joy at all. But I think what I came out with was understanding the power of an art form to move you to the core, was like, and wanting to be able to do that with my work somehow, like as an aspiration, like, wow, if I could ever move an audience to that extent, that would be incredible, and that's something to reach for, just because it feels transformative and it feels validating and it feels I guess I felt seen when I was watching it, the themes that I connected in a way that I didn't know that other people felt that way. I don't know, just so much reached out and grabbed me, and also in the way that it was done, it's so sensitive. It's so, saying all this now, I haven't watched it since Me Too, since Black Lives Matter, so who knows what that feels like now. So sensitively, just like saying that popped into my head. And Jeff Buckley also popped into my head, which was a big teenage love of mine, and then his music's come back and I can't stop listening to Jeff Buckley. He's just incredible.
So maybe we'll see a Jeff Buckley inspired you soon.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, there's something, and I guess that's what art is. It's connecting people, and I guess you're connecting with that film, but also in a cinema or in a theater where you're connecting with everyone around you. Like that feeling is like you just can't. Yeah, it's just so beautiful.
Did you so hearing how you sort of described that about The Hours, that feeling that you walked out, do you say you saw it at the cinema?
Yeah.
Is that a feeling you want to experience again as a creative, as an artist, or is it a feeling that you want your audience to experience?
My audience, I would say. I mean, obviously, I love to experience that too. but I think just understanding the power of that, and I think also I have what are the experience? A kind of yearning for theatre to do the same, because I know that it can. I saw a long time ago. I saw Electra by Gardinitsa, a theatre company from Poland, rooted in the kind of Grotowski method, but then taken somewhere else, by Staniowski, the artistic director, and I remember having it had the same effect on me then, and I was just blown away, but also left thinking, why doesn't theatre do this more? Like, what's wrong with it? Like, I go to see so many shows and I am bored, or I just feel and boredom in theatre is like, I think it's the worst type of boredom that exists on the planet. It's
Because you
like,
can't escape.
can't
Like most things, you could shut a book, or you could turn it off, or like theatre, you're just kind of stuck, can't you?
painful. It's punitive, So I think it's that kind of desire to try and make something that would capture audiences in the same way. I feel like they deserve that. I feel like theatre can do it, but sometimes I feel like theatre gets pulled in different directions by wanting to be a film or wanting to be something that it just isn't. Or like it's like, oh, how can we use technology in theatre? Blah blah blah. And it's like, that's great, but so long as it is theatre that we're making, because theatre itself has a very I think at its heart. I think. I mean, people might push back over this, but I think it's the art of the imagination. It's about making the audience see something that unites in this kind of third space. So we can't see it, but we all imagine it, and we're all connecting in this beautiful imaginative place, right? So if you put a big screen there, and this was the challenge with Last Rites, how do you put something on a screen that doesn't fill the hole that should be filled by the imagination, and then I don't have to do any work because I can see it on the screen. Whereas if I can use the screen like a character that brings other things to life, and we're all still engaged in imagining, then something magical starts to happen. So I think, understanding what theatre is and how to make the case for theatre in its own right, I think might be the key to its survival.
Yeah. It's survived for so long, I think it will.
Yeah, I really hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's very special. When you see a special piece of theatre, it's like nothing else.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And I think hearing your answer, that answer just then, and especially about that, the hours and you feeling seen. And I think many people who've seen your work and will continue to see the work will hopefully, I think, say the same thing as well, which means that I think you're winning and you're achieving on that.
Yeah. So well done.
Well done, Grandstein. Well, that's pretty much it. That's the thank you for. I mean, we've got one more question. We always have one more question. Let's move to apart from one more question.
The final question is, what is the question you wish people would ask you?
You never had that reaction before.
You don't have to have one, but I just
I don't know.
You've done so many interviews, right? At this point,
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know if I particularly want people to ask me loads of questions. So I don't know if I'm
just leave
thinking.
you alone.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah. Okay.
Not at all. Not leave me alone. But I just have never thought about it in that way. So I can't formulate a good answer. It's a garbled mess, is what it is.
I guess for me, it's that thing of like, often you'll come on to do an interview and it'll be about, like we talked about Last Rites today, and, it's the first specific thing. So it's kind of like, we've had like, how are you? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what's that part that you, I don't know, maybe wish that people saw you as, or...
Well, it's a credit to you guys. I felt very comfortable, very welcome, and very able to speak about the company and the show. So your questions were fantastic. I have done interviews where I've left going, wait a minute, they didn't ask about the show.
I have here.
What? So I would say in that case, the question I would like them to ask is about the show. But you guys, covered just about everything. So it was a pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming. It's been lovely. So, I mean, I can't wait to see the show. And I hope it goes well, all the prep, all rehearsals, and go see...
It's all right. It comes out in a couple of weeks. All the Brusolvik.
You've only got a week, so you've got to count.
And best of luck. We're looking forward to seeing it, and I'm sure all of our listeners will as well. Thank you, George, for coming on the show. Thank you for talking about yourself and your work. So it's goodbye from me. I'm Andy Barton.
It's goodbye from me. I'm Gabrielle Shepherd.
And I guess it's goodbye from me too. I'm George Mann.
Great show.
Absolute Scenes is written and hosted by Andy Barton and Gabrielle Shepherd, with music by Brian Hargreaves, edited by Andy Barton, marketing by Gabrielle Shepherd, with assistance from the Bristol Old Vic Theatre. We'd like to thank everyone for their continued support, and especially like to thank this month's guest, George Mann. Catch Ad Infinitum's latest play, Last Rites, at the Bristol Old Vic between the 15th and 19th of July 2025. And if you're listening in the future after July 2025, how is it?
U6.
Do we have hovercars yet to fly over the flooded cities? See you next month.
Well done, everyone.